All right. Welcome everyone to the first live session of Blab, where we blab about all things Web3, exploring what the new internet means for the world and what professionals can do to adapt and take advantage of it. Broadcasted from the heart of Amsterdam, we are finding ourselves on the edge of the metaverse, but with hyperlocal roots. Today, we are having with us Micky, the head of content and strategy at the Fabricant, one of the leading pioneers in digital fashion, and Tal, the founder of Atalye, an innovator that aims to remove predefined sizes from fashion. Micky, Tal, thank you so much for being with us today. Could you please shortly introduce yourselves and your company? Just tell us a little bit more. I think you will do it way better than I could ever. So yeah, please, Micky, if you could.
Sure. My name's Micky. Very happy to be here. Thanks for asking me. I am the head of content at the Fabricant, as mentioned, which means I oversee our narrative voice, our brand storytelling, and guide the team in terms of communicating all our work across various channels and projects. The Fabricant, as you mentioned, is, I guess, the OG digital fashion house. It was founded back in 2018 as the world's first digital fashion house here in Amsterdam. And since then, we've done multiple brand collabs with big brands like Adidas, Under Armour, Puma, I'm going to forget. Anyway, but our work has evolved really to embrace Web3 and purely creating garments that are digital only to be created, traded, and worn in virtual worlds.
So Atalye was founded 2021 with the aim of bringing made-to-measure garments to mass market with the help of technology. That means that we're using 3D body scanners, and then we created our own software. So we're uploading the measurements of the customer, and then we're downloading a pattern that is ready for production. So we're aiming to create the garments within a few days.
So for everyone watching, we are having here with us the pioneers in the digital in fashion in general, digital, phygital, physical, exploring new ways of using technology so that we can express ourselves better. So you're both working using digital processes to create fashion items, be it completely digital or not. In similar ways, though, we could place both of you in a phygital realm. So I wanted to start our conversation by asking you this. Will phygital become a normal way of developing products for fashion brands?
I think so from our perspective. When we're talking about phygital, the fabric obviously only creates digital garments, right? There is no physical end product. So when we create our work, we also create AR filters, which act as a kind of interface between the physical and the digital world. You're obviously operating in the physical world, but seeing a digital overlay on yourself. So for us, that's part of our offering. I don't know if it's maybe the traditional definition of what people think of when they're saying phygital, but it's certainly an aspect of our work.
Right. So you do believe that it's going to be an important part of how fashion brands interact with consumers, with buyers, phygital, be it either, you know, AR or this kind of technologies, or just the idea of tying the digital piece with a physical one.
Yeah, maybe like Tal might be able to speak.
Yeah.
To
I want to hear you.
Yeah,
Both about it.
Yeah, so I'm coming from the industrial design world, and I did it already in 2008, 2009. We were designing in 3D software and then creating physical tests and then the final object.
Nice,
So
nice.
I really believe that this is where fashion is going to.
Right. So in your opinion, this is going to become a standard, right?
It will be. Just it takes more time just because in product design, the products are more expensive. So then it makes more sense to create 3D object before you're making the physical one. And with fashion, because it became so cheap, unfortunately, then nobody wants to put the effort in creating those 3D objects.
And, you know, if we talk about fashion, I would say that primarily this is a form of expression, right? And what you are trying to do is to offer extra personalization for buyers, although in different ways. And if the personality is driving the way you dress yourself, do you think what you're doing is going to also boost a person's ability to express their individuality?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I would say the biggest part of the conversations that we have internally during concept creation, ideating collections, is what the meaning of our work is going to be and how it's going to facilitate value to the end user. So for us, rather than it just being about creating a garment, we're allowing people to curate their identity and really explore maybe parts of themselves or their expression that they wouldn't necessarily show in the physical world, right? When you go into the digital environment, people inevitably kind of think, oh, maybe I can try this look, I would never wear whatever, luminous wings in the physical world.
Sometimes you don't even can.
Yeah, you can't, right? We can do
Yeah.
impossible things. So this idea of playing and exploring and experimenting with your identity, and hopefully that feeding back into your perception of it in the physical world is very much part of I guess, the process for our work.
Right. So people want to go a little bit crazier in the digital.
I think so. Yeah, we've definitely found people kind of, if you give them an opportunity to. We did a beta test of a platform which has now taken full fruition as the Fabricant studio, our kind of co-creation atelier. And the early beta platform, we had avatars in there, and everybody could just jump in and select a body. And inevitably, I think people chose a body that wasn't theirs, gender-wise or physique-wise, just to try on and see how that felt. So I think this idea that, oh, hang on a minute, I can really have a look at what's going on here and see how it feels to be somebody different, and yeah, have a sense somehow digitally of what it means to be another person and who can I be in the digital world.
You made me curious before jumping to tell what do you think is going to be the effect of changing your appearance in the digital realm, be it gender, be it looking just differently, more fit or less, or what do you think is going to be the effect on the user ultimately? Is it just going to be something for fun, or is it going to open new avenues for self-exploration?
I completely think it will open new avenues. I think we're so early in this space, right? We've got
Yeah.
to remember it's like years in the big bang of the digital fashion world. It's like very nascent, the metaverse. So I think we're obviously yet to see. But certainly I think there's papers that would support this. There was something that was written, I think at Stanford, that we've referenced in a paper that we did with a company here in Amsterdam called Modem. And it was called the Proteus effect. And that found that when you gave people certain kinds of avatars, for example, if their avatar was sort of bigger or taller than the other avatars, it kind of influenced the way that they behaved in certain environments. They maybe felt a little bit more confident, a little bit more able to make certain deals and things. So it's very interesting how this perception really shifted. It'll be interesting to see how that feeds back into lives, particularly, obviously, you don't have to take a very literal form. But you could be a river, you can be a gas, you can be a tree.
World.
Yeah, you can be a completely other species, you can
Yeah.
be a universe. So who knows where that might take us philosophically?
Yeah, let's not get there.
Yeah, let's not. It's too early for that.
Yeah, it's too early for that. Tal, but what about you? So
We're focused more on the physical space.
yeah, and
so-
you are making garments for people for their true sizes, right? And
Yeah.
I want to talk about this, the effect of that on expression, on self-expression, on individuality, and all that. So yeah, please.
So from our point of view, is also making, now we're really focusing on women, but of course the technology can work also on men. But we're really focusing on making them feel better about themselves, because what we found out from research, that women, most of the time when they're going shopping, it's at least 50% like a bad experience for them, because they are not fitting standard sizes, or I used to be this size, now I'm that size. They're looking at other women. It's not a positive experience. And what we want to do is actually make people feel amazing the way they are. We should not fit into some kind of standard. We should just be, size tal, because this is who I am and what I am. And I'm shorter and I'm a bit wider, so I don't fit in a standard 36 or 38. I'm somewhere in between. And the digital allows us to actually create those pieces that will fit you more and that you will love more and care about more. So our angle is more a sustainable angle, that you will buy less and own your pieces more. But of course, the design part can be in many different ways. For example, t-shirt I'm wearing right now, it's a collaboration with a Ukrainian artist. So we created it in digitally designed,
Yeah.
and then we offered it for sale. We can print now with different technologies from 1 meter of fabric till how many meters that we want. So we can actually produce on demand the amount that we sold. So really changing the way that we're producing, the way that we're thinking of fashion, the way that we're consuming fashion.
So is it more about comfort than expression, or is it about both? Is it also making people feel comfortable, but also allowing them to express themselves differently because you are making those certain pieces specifically for them because it might be unique, or
Yeah.
just the fact that their body maybe looks unique compared to all the other ones that are using all the other people that are using sizes that are just predefined for everyone.
So it's also about your own taste, because also in our website you can customize, so you can choose the fabric, the color, the shape of the design, so you can actually create your own design. But
Right.
also those limited editions with other brands, designers, artists that we're offering. That's another unique selling point that we're looking at.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's super interesting. And I think you are both trying to go after the statement, sell more creativity and less clothes, right? So how do you feel this will play out for the current economic growth model of the fashion industry?
Interesting one, because the way that we're seeing bigger players in the physical fashion space is maybe using the digital environment and digital garments as something that feeds into their physical production. Whereas for us, it's really about shifting away from physical production and for sustainability reasons, because
Right.
garments.
Yeah.
And really kind of thinking of digital fashion as its own sector, its own world, and something that will become the future of fashion. It's very early days. So for us, it's interesting to see. It's inevitable. There's going to be a kind of a Web 2.0
Yeah.
sort of where we are. We talk about Web 3, and we all upload space to go through a lesser degree. But realistically, you can't turn the ship around. So
Yeah.
we're in this moment of bigger brands trying things out, and right now it's maybe connecting to their physical output,
And to PR.
and to PR and to marketing and to new revenue streams.
True,
Right?
yeah.
That's the reality of where they're at. But for us, it's kind of encouraging everybody to really embrace both.
Right. What about you, Tal? So creativity, not more clothes.
Yeah, so we are a bit more realistic. I mean,
Dreaming and not dreaming. To dream or not to dream, maybe.
yeah, I think people will always buy garments because people like to buy stuff. It makes them feel better.
Right.
But we think that we're the right choice to buy. It's like I think my model to look at in the brand is like Tom shoes. I don't know if you know them, but it's shoes that once you buy a pair, somebody else gets a pair for your purchase. And that just makes me feel better about buying those shoes. And that's why almost every summer I will buy a new pair of shoes from this company. So
Right.
I want people to choose us because it's a beautiful product and they love it, and it's unique because it's made for them and they customize it to their taste, but also because it's the right choice, because polluting less, you're doing it the right way, you know who made it for you, so the production chain is clear.
And since we touched on the point of selling fewer clothes or none at all, I wanted to ask both of you, how can consumers actually tell if a fashion brand is sustainable? Because, I mean, the sustainability concept is thrown around everywhere. Oil companies are saying they're sustainable. So yeah, what does it take for a fashion brand to be sustainable? Also, in their digital production processes, maybe.
100%. I think it's really important to have these conversations, right? Because as you rightly point out, sustainability is just like this word that's thrown out there. It's become almost like wallpaper. We've seen it so much. And there's a lot of greenwashing. So I don't know what standards that the physical world has. I know like something like cradle to cradle, right, is an incredible standard that you really have to adhere to very strict specifications to prove all parts of your production line are 100% ethical, sustainable, et cetera, and reducing their carbon impact. But I don't know if that's kind of how everybody uses the word sustainability, right? They kind of play. In the digital world, I think it's super important, right? We don't get a free pass just because we're not hurting physically.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize that. For us, we put science behind it. We did a collab with Imperial College London to do a full life cycle assessment of the processes for a physical t-shirt versus the creation of a digital t-shirt. The reduction in carbon was 90-something%, so massive.
Yep.
And obviously there's no chemicals, no water, and all of the sort of, I guess, adjacent stuff doesn't exist. But the reality is we are using electricity. Our work is on blockchains. The blockchain we use, by the way, is Flow. It's a proof of stake blockchain, so a sustainable blockchain.
Yep.
Which is the reason I chose it. But the reality is we don't have any control over data centers. There's, the production of energy itself needs to be more sustainable, renewable. So it gets a little bit complex when it gets beyond our own. So we're trying to look at those things, but obviously when you get to data centers and blockchains, marketplaces that we're working with, obviously there's a huge.
There's a lot of things you cannot control yourselves.
Yeah, you have to
right.
really start picking vast networks. Right? So, but we're conscious of it, and we're trying to kind of control the parts that we can, because sustainability was the founding principle of Fabricant. It's the reason that we exist. But also there's electricity somewhere.
Right. And Tal, if we're talking about physical fashion, and if we're talking about brands that call themselves sustainable, how do you tell if that really is the case?
Yeah, we have a lot of conversations around that with the team. I think it's a very wide word, sustainability. And
Yeah.
what do you mean when you're talking about sustainability? It can be so many things throughout the production chain. But I can tell you how are we doing that and what.
And please also tell me what's the most important thing that's in the control of the brands and that consumers should know about or look for. Because again, like if we're talking about energy, everyone's using the same energy, more or less. But if you're talking specifically about the process that you are going through, or brands like yours, or fashion brands, right?
So how I actually came into fashion, it was through the article of Rene Plaza collapse in Bangladesh. It was a factory that collapsed in 2013, and more than 1,000 people were killed in that collapse. I only saw this article in 2015, but it was really eye-opening for me. I didn't know that me buying a lot of fast fashion makes this horrible things happen. So that's why I started this journey into how to make things different in this industry. And so for me, it's really important that the company, that you know who made your garment and under what working conditions. And that's something that is really hard for big companies to know. So I would tell customers first look where the garment was produced, because if it was produced within Europe, so
there's some standards.
there are some standards of how a production should be.
Right.
But from that, where the fabrics came from, it's not really written on the label. So the fabrics most likely came from outside of Europe, but of course not for all companies. But these are some of the basic standards that you should look. Also, what kind of fabric is it? And that's a whole different story, talking about fabrics. What is sustainable? Should it be 100% of a natural fiber or not? And if they recycle the garments that they're not selling. So how many garments are they not selling? Of course, nobody talks about that. and many of the companies are burning their dead stock.
Yeah.
Now they're stopping to do that because people are talking about that, so it's being shipped to landfills. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of issues around that. What I tell you that we are doing is that we're buying fabrics that are produced in Europe, and we're producing within Europe. Now we're producing in the Netherlands, so we know exactly who made them and how it's being, and we can actually control everything.
So the most sustainable behavior is less or no clothes at all, right? If you both agree with this, I mean, on the side of consumers, right? Because it's very difficult to actually go through the production chain. So just think twice if you really need that piece of clothing.
No, you can also buy from the companies that it is clear, that they are saying where are they manufacturing. They have pictures on the website of
Right.
their factories, so it's very clear. And the sustainable brands that are existing in the Netherlands, and there are a lot of them, they're actually showing that. So then you feel more comfortable buying through them. So yeah, it will cost more, of course, because it costs more to pay people that are living within Europe. And then you're doing the right choice.
I wasn't thinking about asking about costs, but it's interesting because at this point, digital fashion can be very cheap for people to buy as long as they have a place where they can express themselves somewhere a world. So in a way, in theory, it could replace physical expression because you can spend money to do it for actually purposes that can give you more items to wear or more I don't know, weird things to wear in the metaverse or on other platforms. But then if we're talking about sustainability in the physical world, it's more expensive. So my question is, um, what do you think is going to happen for people who want to be more sustainable? Are they going to buy more digital items in the future, not right now at the moment, so that they spend less in the real world and they express themselves more there? Or are they going to spend more money in the physical world to actually buy those types of pieces that are indeed more sustainable?
It's interesting because I think there's already a movement amongst young people, Gen Z, good, to be conscious consumers. And I think depending on your particularity, you might make conscious physical choices like toys, or certainly this is what's known as anecdata, data based on my own personal anecdotes.
All right.
My niece and nephews are between the ages of 7 and 10. They all play
Roblox.
Fortnite, Roblox. But there's one that's obsessed with, I forgot what it's called.
Yeah.
And when they ask for gifts at Christmas, they all wanted V-Bucks and things, so they could buy digital things. It was really interesting to see that they're focused because maybe they've only grown up in a digital world. They know the digital environment. It's very much part of their natural expression, and that's where their preferences were going. That doesn't necessarily mean getting external.
Yeah.
Kids. It doesn't necessarily mean going. But I think the reality is we'll see a mix of these things. We'll see vintage, conscious brands like Tiles, and certainly more of a shift to the uptake of digital assets. And then some people will be pure kind of like Web3 digital maxes and go, right, that's it.
Right.
I've got my garment underlayer and everything else I wear. You could only ever see me on screen. I'm wearing AR.
Right, or
That's me.
those events where I've seen it once actually. Someone coming with an iPad that's attached somehow to a backpack in front, and then you could see the bored ape, right? So I mean, you could still see the person behind it, but the idea is whenever I talk to you or you talk to someone, you're gonna see the face of the bored ape on the iPad, right?
Ah,
Which is
okay. I'm hoping there's better kind of hardware than that. Well, I'm hoping for some kind of,
right, right.
rather than
Yeah, true.
taping
It should be.
things to your body. Yeah.
Right. And what do you think, Tal?
Yeah, maybe there are already all kind of technologies, like wearable technologies that are showing designs over like flowy screens, for example. So maybe you can actually wear your kind of a onesie suit that is all a screen, and then this will change and wear all kind of garments at the same time, for example.
And do you think, do you have a question, or yeah, Sharon, come on.
I totally see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anybody managed to see ABBA in 3D. I got really lucky and got gifted some tickets, and nothing to do with work, actually, a completely random connection that I had. And that, I guess, just the way that they'd used that, which is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was kind of like a gig. It was an experience. It was like nothing I've ever seen. But it was by Industrial Light and Magic, so it was no surprise. It was absolutely incredible. And the work that they put into the garments and the way that they were presenting the idea of 3D to people who weren't really 3D aware, and presenting as an entertainment experience, I think is very much going to feed into movies. And for sure, they're looking at gaming inspiration. For sure, they'll be looking at digital fashion, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a digital fashion costume Oscar sometime.
Right. There was a fashion event last week, right? And the piece that got most attention was the pixel. I don't remember its name, but it was a pixel base. You know what I'm talking about? If you don't know, I'll show it to you afterwards. But it was
a physical garment
yeah.
that was made to look like pixel. It was very clever.
Yeah,
Very
voxel
clever.
based kind of.
Yeah.
Voxel.
Very smart.
Yeah, and it when you actually looked at it, it was I know it messed up with my head. I couldn't comprehend that this was physical. It was really interesting. But yeah, going back to our horses, and to sustainability, because I want to know one more thing about it. What do you think is the biggest myth or misconception about sustainability? Right, if we're going to be very specific about this in fashion, okay, so maybe not in other industries right now.
Yeah, there was now a research of consumers that were asked who is the most sustainable brand, and one of the first ones were like H&M and one of the big fast fashion brands.
Right.
So yeah, I think that just consumers, they don't really know what does it mean, and also, as we said before, sustainability can mean so many things. So
maybe the misconception is sustainability itself.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Right? Do you agree?
Well, I would say the thing that comes up most often with our work that we notice when people, certainly things that we've been to this NFT, is a complete misunderstanding that there's more than one blockchain. Not all blockchains are using their energy of Liechtenstein or somewhere on a daily basis. So I think it's important for people to be made more aware that they do have sustainable choices when they're looking at digital garments, and not all blockchains are equal. Ethereum, as we know, just switched to proof of stake, which was huge, which will really influence, because a lot of artists and creators were hanging back because Ethereum is the preferred blockchain for lots of creators. Was happy with the amount of energy consumption when it was a proof of work blockchain. So I think just the maybe not crypto Web3 engaged person, there's no reason for them to have this knowledge. So I think us as an industry have got to do a lot more communication about our world and education. There are better choices to be made, but I'd say that's the number one thing in terms of people. The negative comment that we get about NFT garments is people saying, "How can you do this? Aren't you meant to be a better version of the physical world?" But somehow, in a very energy intensive technology to do so.
That's interesting, because I would have thought that people will think, oh, it's digital. It must be sustainable because it's digital, and because digital things usually are not as energy intensive or as unsustainable as physical products and processes, right? So it's interesting to hear that the non-crypto native people are actually wondering if what you are doing is truly sustainable.
Yeah, and I think, the NFT space has probably done itself a disservice on that. There's
Yeah.
been lots of projects that are just out in the world and kind of, I guess, come across about just big making schemes.
But at least they had in their roadmap that they'll donate like $10,000 or something to sustainable businesses or charity.
As long as it's in the roadmap, right?
As long as it's in the roadmap. Right.
Yeah, but I actually think it's a good thing, right? That people are looking at our world, and trying to make themselves aware and want to be sustainable. That's a really good thing. But lots of people do look at, of course, there's no natural resources.
Hmm.
There isn't a factory somewhere, kind of carbon on as a disaster. People are being exploited in a way. So there's definitely that idea about, but also within that, there's nuance, and it's good to see that people are questioning. So I think it's positive.
Nice. That's interesting. Talon, I have a question just for you because I was wondering this. So you were also saying earlier that someone would come to your company, would create a garment that's true to their size, and then they would keep it for longer. So my first question is actually two questions. My first question is, how do you know, and what guarantees, or maybe not guarantees, but makes it more probable that that person will wear the piece longer than it usually wears other pieces of clothing?
So there are research made of pieces, not only garments, that are made for you, that people have more emotional attachment to them. So then it's the reason that they are keeping it for longer. And also it's designed the way they like it. So many times people will go to a store and say, oh, if they didn't have this pocket here, or if they had the sleeve a bit longer, or, those kind of small details that we are able to provide because we're producing only on demand. So we're actually doing whatever you want. And also there is in the industry this conversation about micro factories, about bringing production back home, about producing on demand. It's mainly talks, unfortunately, but slowly it is happening, and I think we're the front runners for that. The industry right now is really based on producing thousands of pieces from each size and color, and it's not working. Sometimes thousands of pieces are not being sold for just
Yeah.
one design, and there are huge storage places of stuff that were never sold from all brands. It's something that they're not talking about, and all brands are doing that. So
That's interesting. So you'd say that personalization is actually what's helping people keep their clothes for longer.
yeah,
Because looking more into this, I found out that 1 in 4 young people are considering throwing, or not throwing, but not using a piece of clothing once they've posted it on social media. Women are generally considering their clothes old after 2 or 3 times wearing them, and so on, right? And yeah, it's just but I think I got the answer, because it's interesting to hear that personalization is actually what makes you keep your clothes more than the ones that you go and buy in H&M or elsewhere, that anyone can buy, everyone can buy, that doesn't have your size and doesn't fit you perfectly. So yeah, it's probably personalization, right?
but also from research that I did do in my master program, a lot of, and it's not only me, of course, you can also find other researchers,
Right.
that people are using maybe 10 or 15% of their closet. There are those constant garments that we go back to because we feel that they are the most flattering to our bodies. Or I did this research when I went to women's houses and I asked them, like, what is your favorite dress? It was really this kind of typical dress that many of them showed me. And it's more those black dresses that are like standard. And when they don't know what to wear, they go to those kind of classic designs. And we want to offer those classic designs that will fit you, for because I have those kind of pieces in my closet, those really classic ones, or those really unique ones that I know that I cannot find anywhere else, like this secondhand thing that I found in this unique market and it looks amazing. It's from the 70s, and we'll never find this quality of fabric. So I think those are the pieces that will survive.
That's interesting. I think those people who are wearing the classics in the physical world are putting wings and all the crazy stuff in in the digital. Or it would actually be an interesting experiment to see how that goes, because yeah, it looks like people are usually going for something that's more subtle in real life, and they're just going just all in the digital, which maybe yeah makes, or at least in my opinion, both worlds desirable in different ways for fashion and for fashion consumers, right? Um, so, although you are both working in fashion and you're both focused on sustainability, you are building different worlds, just as I mentioned earlier. So, how do you both feel about digital fashion compared to physical one? What do you think are the pros and cons of each? And in here, like, I want to get as much as possible into self-expression, into the reasons why consumers do buy what they buy, and into the purpose of fashion itself, why it was invented, and all that, and where is it going, right? And yeah, just want to compare the two worlds, and I want to hear it from both of you, because I know that you might have clashing opinions on this. So yeah, hopefully it's gonna be
Setting
uh,
us up for us.
no. Hopefully it's gonna be just a conversation where we can see both sides of the story. This is what I was interested in.
Sure. I would say from the fabricant's perspective, we see a whole new way of iterating fashion. So an entire new fashion industry that's both more innovative, democratic, equitable, and sustainable. By which I mean, so our co-creation platform, the Fabricant Studio, where anybody can come in and co-create NFT garments. With that, in the smart contract, which is the piece of code behind every NFT, we've written everybody into that contract. So it's an equal split. Every time somebody mints a garment, the garment creator gets a share, the person that created the digital
No, all the
fabric,
people in the production process.
and then the person that minted. And we ask people to co-create collections. So this idea of co-creation and really resisting the norms of the physical fashion industry in terms of exclusivity, in terms of being dictatorial, right? There's a lone creative director, and their aesthetic is what counts, and your job as a consumer is just to consume that garment and get on with your life. What we're saying is no, we are co-creators with our community, with our audience, and we can all create a collection together. So we don't, tell them what to mint. They're given choices. They get to collaborate directly with the creators and the artists, and then they're written into the origin of the garment on blockchain for all time, and then they get a share of the revenue in perpetuity down the line. All of these things are not native to the physical fashion industry. They're contrary to the way that it's operated for years. So for us, everything that we do is like, okay, let's imagine a new industry that resists all of these toxic elements that we've kind of got used to somehow culturally.
Mm.
It's like, well, that's just the fashion industry and that's how it is. Well, no, it doesn't have to be like that, right? There's a completely new way of thinking about things because we have tech. We've never been at this moment in time where we have the tech available to us to do creatively what we can do in the fashion industry. Um, the industry was created for societies that existed 300 years ago, and it sort of hasn't really changed that much in terms of its perspective and how it operates. So for us, when we talk about digital fashion, yeah, of course, it's exploring identity, it's digitally dressing up, it's enjoying yourself.
Fun.
But behind that, the framework, the infrastructure that we're very intent on building and providing the tools for is imagining a completely new industry that brings the fashion industry up to date for the 21st century. And
Right. That's well said. Al, where are you? What's your head? Where's your head in terms of digital versus physical pros and cons? What do you think?
Well, I see digital, like I said before, I've been using 3D software like for 15 years already. So I see it really as a tool to create things in the physical world. Of course, it can also stay in the virtual world, but I think that it's really niche of people. So there are some people that are gamers and they love the virtual world and they will, explore, and maybe this tribe will grow. But I do believe that a lot of the people will still want to, be in the physical world and explore who they are and what they are in the physical. So I see the virtual world helps the physical world just to be better. And that's what we do at Atelier. We're kind of in like a different way, like redesigning how the production chain should be for the physical garments. Because 50 years ago, there wasn't those huge factories in the other side of the world that were producing too many things and then were shipped back to the first world. So we believe that with technology, and it's not only 3D, but it's also machinery and internet and many other parts of technology, we can create this new consumption, new production, new concept of how we should purchase our garments.
What do you think physical has that digital doesn't, and maybe also digital has but physical doesn't?
Well, as a product designer, I love products. So the feeling of the materials, and it with fashion, it can be leather or bi-leather or the wool or whichever fabric or
So it's your
material that
experience with that.
you feel it on your body, you feel it with your hand, you appreciate the work. In the end, it's craftsmanship. Like creating a garment is a lot of work, and I think that this is also something that consumers kind of lost, like in many other industries. They don't know how long does it take even to create a simple T-shirt. You really need to know what you're doing. I think if I could do that, I would put it is in the curriculum in like elementary school. Just
Right.
like this one class of create your own T-shirt, just to understand how complicated it is,
Yeah.
and you should not pay €5 for that. So I think that this is a big draw for the physical, but the digital, of course, you can do whatever you want. You can redesign and rethink, and I think it's an amazing tool for designers and
For
creators.
flexibility
Yeah, for
in
flexibility,
creative
for
thinking.
reducing waste in testing, for
And for
editing.
creation. So not just production wise, but
No, creation. Yeah,
yeah,
like
creativity wise, right?
because
Yeah, go
now,
ahead.
for example, I don't know, I'm imagining this circle dress, and or we had those 3D software. You needed to take the fabric and cut it and put it on a mannequin or on yourself or on your friend and actually test how does it look. And with those tools, you can actually do it much faster without buying anything, and really see it in different fabrics, in different falls, because there is a lot of things that are still not 100% right in the digital world, like the fabric and the fall and everything, but it still gives you a lot of knowledge in how the final garment will look like.
But I would say that the processes of both the Fabricant and Atelier when it comes to design is not that different, right? I mean, the main difference is actually that one is made for the digital world and remains in the digital world, and one is made in the digital world to be transposed in the physical world, which then comes to the desire of people to self-express themselves differently in both scenarios. But Tal, you were talking about the senses, and I think this is an interesting idea. And I wanted to also ask you, Micky, about this. At this point in time, there are not many senses that you can use to actually interact with digital fashion, right? So I don't have a specific question about this, but I'm wondering what do you think about the fact that right now we mainly can only visualize it digitally, and if you think there maybe will be some ways in the future that we actually interact differently so that we can get closer to the level of intimacy we have with our items in their physical world.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because when you talk about the sentence, I think we talk about haptic and haptic gums where you can
Yeah.
touch and feel, but you still have emotions, right? Emotions aren't anchored to physicality. So when you see yourself in a digital garment, you get a rush, you feel it, people get excited. We were thinking about kind of how to describe our work, and we called it, rather than calling it haute couture, because the Fabricant's level of iteration is very highly crafted, it's very detailed. We decided to call it thought couture because it exists beyond the physical, like the thought. So people kept saying to us, like, what do you mean? This was obviously when we first introduced the concept of non-physical garments. It was quite challenging for people.
Right.
And people said, what do you mean it's a garment that exists, that doesn't exist physically?
We
said-
back, I mean, a couple of years ago, and still today, it still means it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's
people
not,
feel
it
like-
doesn't exist physically. It's just,
yeah,
it doesn't.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So to maybe give people something to anchor that thinking process in, we said, well, like, do you think? Do you have thoughts? And they're like, yes. And do you accept that they're real? Yeah. Well, then, they don't manifest physically, but they exist. And therefore, digital fashion can manifest without physically existing. So there's a little bit of,
Interesting,
obviously we've spent a bit of time thinking about this because we've had to talk to people about our
Right,
world.
right.
And people just look at us going, sure, this is a thing. It's 100% a thing. But yeah, this idea of like your emotional world still exists in all virtual worlds. When people are interacting, they're still human beings. So for us, that's where we focus on. So our garments are generally anchored in a sense of reality in terms of how they look and feel. So it's important to note that maybe all our fashion designers were all classically trained physical fashion designers who transitioned their skills into digital software.
Right.
So when you look at our garments, they fit and drape and flow properly. They're stitched together exactly appropriately on the seams. They move exactly in the way that they should move. We apply digital fabric to it because they were designed with that level of knowledge and awareness of what fashion should be. So we don't completely detach entirely. But for us, it's always about creating something in the digital world that expresses the emotions that you have in physical reality. So we definitely try and bring the feel. It's not kind of devolved. But there are lots of iterations in digital fashion, it has to be said. And ours maybe sits at that kind of high craft, emotional, more anchored in the history of fashion in terms of creativity than some other iterations.
Right. That's actually super interesting, right? To think about emotion as being what the main driver of the reason why actually people do buy digital. I mean, it is the reason why people buy anything generally. But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. Now I'm getting close to the end of my list of questions. We've got like 5 more. And we talked earlier about the differences in young consumers. Micky, you talked more about this. The fact that they buy cosmetics in game, the fact that they are looking for more conscious brands, and so on. So, what is one behavioral prediction about the next generations, which could be, I mean, maybe Gen Z is still the next one because they haven't all grown up, and then probably Generation Alpha. So to repeat, what is one behavioral prediction about the next generations of fashion consumers that you think is the most plausible? So let's try. I mean, let's try to think about the things that you truly believe in, rather the ones that you hope for.
Well, to be honest, they're probably the same things. But I would say it's the likelihood that their digital wardrobe will be bigger than their physical.
All right. So this is what you're thinking the next generations will actually
Yeah.
have as the
There
normal.
will be a tipping point where people invest more in digital garments and digital assets instead of physical goods for all kinds of reasons. Economic, sustainable, the way that they live their lives probably is the major influencer. The idea that they to trade their assets and garments, sort of by the time maybe these generations mature, the metaverse and the idea, the big ideas will be more fully realized. So it will be very instinctive and natural to do that. You already see in these conversations, I have to say, with with the younger generations. They don't make this distinction between the physical and digital world. It's just
One life.
life,
Yeah.
right? And there's no big conversation or convincing that you have to do, because it's just part of their reality anyway. So for me, maybe that tipping point, I can see things.
Nice. Yeah, and I like that you touched upon the term reality, because I'm not sure if it's the older generations. I don't have data for that, but I know that a lot of people are talking about reality as, you know, the physical world. But then if we're talking about emotions, then digital feels just as real. A text that you receive and it's bad news, or a movie that you're watching, or any sort of augmentation of your reality where you're not present here in the moment in this room, but you're actually there in that world, right? Tal, what do you think? What is your behavioral prediction for young or the next generation of fashion consumers?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, as you say, that people are seeing it in physical and digital. I mean, we're already living that, right? Like, we have our own identities in social media. It's our digital world. They will just have more of those platforms and places to be. I think that for sure people will buy less from everything, just because all of that is happening in the world. I think that, you know, the economic level, prices.
Also, it cannot go on forever to just
Yeah, we
keep
don't
on,
have
right?
we don't
We
have
can,
resources for
yeah, we
that.
don't.
So things must change, and I think
Right.
they're also more aware of the climate change. They're being informed in a young age. So I hear from my friends that, unfortunately, I have many of my friends that are still using those disposable cups and stuff.
Oh,
But they have children, like 10-year-olds, and they're telling them, Mom, stop buying that. And I think
right.
there is a God. I mean, someone
And it's
is
children.
yeah, definitely. So I think, yeah, those 10-year-olds, they are more aware. So they are actually educating their parents now.
And do you think that the younger generations will also buy? I mean, they'll surely buy digital fashion on marketplaces online, digitally. But do you also think that they will mostly buy physical clothes still through digital marketplaces, and only get to experience them, as you said, like through all the senses once it comes to their door, once they have it at home, or they will actually go in stores?
I do think that people will go into stores, but at the stores, they were also not really changed in the past 100 years. You can
Right.
look at pictures. So also the shopping experience will change.
Right.
This is also something that we're talking about at Atelier, like getting scanned and seeing the production. This is something that you're not seeing anymore. You're just seeing racks. And if you look at department stores from like 1940, it looks the same as department stores today. So I think all industries are in this point that they're shifting into something different, because it wasn't changed for so long.
So it's all transforming mainly into an experience.
Yeah,
Right.
and less owning,
Let's
more sharing and less owning.
Nice. All right. My next question is: what currently popular trend or process do you think will be around in the next 10 years?
I'm hoping that there'll be, we talked about hardware before, and you were talking about people
Right.
like attaching screens themselves. There will be some.
You should have seen it though. You really
I
should
know, I
have been.
believe it. I believe it.
So yeah, it was just like an iPad, right, attached to some sort of skeleton kind of thing, right? It was yeah. Sorry, go on.
Well, I think we're going to fix that. That's
Yeah.
well, that's
Right.
what I'm thinking. I think there's going to be a better interface for us to experience that layer of digital meeting physical. I think Snap Lens is already there, right? They're
Yeah.
kind of developing glasses that you can wear that allow you to walk around the built environment and maybe experience augmented reality through the glasses to a certain degree. I don't know where they are on that. So for me, I think those kind of technologies and that kind of hardware will become a little bit more seamless. So we have a little bit more of a seamless experience between the digital and physical, and we can really merge these two worlds in a way that feels much more comfortable. Always having a big screen, so having some.
It's still interesting that whenever we're talking about anything that's digital, we're actually mainly talking about something that is physical, even if it's just hardware,
Yeah.
because in a way you need to access the digital realm physically, physically, right? So, yeah, we're still, yeah, always gonna be tied to that. Tal, what do you think? What is something, a trend that's going on here, a process, and that's going to be around in 10 years?
Yeah, for me, I really believe that from my point of view, it's micro factories, not only for fashion, but different industries.
Can you also develop a bit more on micro factories?
So micro factory is actually a smaller factory that has more automation in it. So then the production line is faster and more efficient. And I really believe that this is the future of many industries, because
Mhm.
you need to bring the production back home, and it needs to happen faster because consumers are not willing to wait. So I think this is from the industry. That's the trend that we will see. From consumers, I think that it's more, awareness, or exploring their own taste and creating their own things. So it's personalization, or do it yourself, or crafting their own designs, buying secondhand and creating something new out of it. So really,
I like this
exploring.
co-creation, collaboration, remixing, maybe would also be called in in certain contexts. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. About the secondhand
I think
clothing and
I see it already
change it.
with my team members. That they are already doing that, and that the do-it-yourself trend is really becoming bigger. So people are really to express themselves, creating something new out of something that already exists.
Existed. And you know, uh maybe this is a bit silly, but do you think we're gonna still have the name jacket in 10 years or something? I don't know, a piece of clothing or something that's very popular still nowadays and that will be there in 10 years. Either a trend, which you could call it, whatever that is, or, just a piece of clothing or a way of dressing, or we're all going to be naked walking around with glasses and seeing everyone wearing, AR fashion. So, right. So, yeah, if you could let me know, like one thing, one trend,
I just
whatever.
think there's probably things that we haven't even thought of yet. That we know how fast the tech space moves, and we were saying earlier, feels like 10 in the digital space because of tech and evolution. There are probably words for garments that don't exist yet that we haven't thought of that will be incoming because they're not physically possible. So we have to kind of think about what they might be when they manifest themselves in the digital world. It's neither a dress nor a hat, so then it becomes something else.
It's a face. Oh, I know.
Yeah, but the idea of what is fashion and what is augmentation is going to be really interesting. Like, what are cosmetics digital? What is it when, rather than just trying on a certain color becomes trying on a different skin, or trying on a texture, or there's lots of things that we haven't thought of yet, that no one's tried yet, that we'll have to think of names for. But that's the problem with digital. But you have this vast creative palette, and it could
you need to
all
think
be
differently.
possible. Yeah.
But it's also going to be interesting because in a way, I think we will still experience the effects of digital in the physical world, even though it doesn't have anything to do with phygital, right? Just purely in terms of trends and in terms of how things look like. So it's going to be, you were talking about skins. Maybe in I don't know, 10 years, I will have to spray myself with paint before going out all over my body so that I can, express myself better in a way that wasn't possible before. Yeah, it's interesting.
But just picking up on the catwalk show that we saw,
Yeah.
where the digital world had kind of intervened
True.
and fed right back to it with this pixelated garment that was entirely physical, but was quite incredible how they created it in a kind of trompe-l'oeil effect to look like a digital.
True, but now another question came to me. So the truth is that at this point, people spend as much time as possible in the digital realm already, right? So it's not that they will spend more time, because they already spend most of their time digitally in a way or another. So going back to what I was saying, if people are already spending most of their time digitally, and in theory they won't have more time to spend in there, they just like spend, like advertisers and marketing companies are trying to make them spend as much time on their own things rather than spend more time in the digital, because it's almost impossible at this point, or it's very difficult for most people who are spending a lot of time. So my question was, if in 10 years, let's say that digital fashion is going to be a very big thing, right? Both physical and digital will still be very important, and they will combine each other, because if this is correct, that people will not be able to spend more time digitally because they still got to spend some time in the physical world, at least. Is it true, or do you think that this would actually mean that we're not going to actually transition more to being spending more time into the metaverse or into virtual realms, but rather spending it differently? So then this would also mean that there will be a big need for physical solutions and digital ones.
So I think it's maybe touching on what we talked about earlier, this idea of both the digital and physical just being part of everybody's lived experience already, and more so for generations. Maybe there will be, ultimately with everything that we're talking about, certainly in terms of the metaverse, people will decide. There has to be value for them to spend in these environments. So I think we really have to think about the worlds that we're creating and the value that they'll bring and the meaning that they bring to people's daily experiences. I think it's easy to talk about assets, goods, and products, and maybe leave the humanity. I think it's very important when we're iterating for these spaces and we're talking about the future that we want to create. We've got to remember the human experience at the heart of that, and I think it's very so. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you live your life, how much time you spend in the digital
True,
world.
because you could maybe spend more if you don't spend any.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So people are already making choices, and then that people might decide to very compartmentalize, like this is the amount of time that I'm going to spend in my physical reality.
We also see that with young people, right?
Yeah.
Right, because they do want to spend less time on social media.
Mm.
So how is that going to affect? And I actually want to hear it from you, Tal, as well. Like what do you think about this? What do you think? The trends are showing that we are spending more time in the digital realm, right? And there's a lot of development going on there. But do you actually think we're going to see a counter trend to that? Do we actually will at some point young people decide, okay, this is too much. Maybe this is not good for my mental health, which it isn't. Social media
Yeah.
isn't. Or will it actually evolve in a way that half of our lives maybe will be physical, half will be digital, and it's just going to be a pure combination of these two things that hopefully will, happen naturally.
I think it's very personal. I think you already see some people that are really stepping away from social media, using dummy phones, not wanting to be in the virtual world any longer. And there are people that will always get attracted into those worlds and want to be there all the time. So I think it's
Mhm.
really the type of person that you are. But now when you're talking about it, I was thinking like, yeah, why are we seeing just, text when we're getting into Facebook? Like, why isn't it like this whole 3D experience?
Right.
Actually, like I'm walking somewhere and then meeting the person and actually talking to him. Like, why is it so flat? Now that you're
We were
saying
not
that.
made to use phones, and we didn't not evolve to use touch screen devices and phones, right? 2D made to look like 3D, basically.
Yeah, I
right?
think for me, that's also my personality. It's
Yeah.
always a combination between the physical and the digital. So also in the experiences that you are having. So maybe actually seeing things in 3D that are not really there.
Mm.
Art in a museum, it can be, or if
Yeah.
it's a garment it's not actually there, but you see it, and then if you want it, then it's produced for you. So something in between.
Right. Okay. So then we have consensus on this, don't we?
I think that's the reality of just being a person, right?
Right.
My professional life is very much in the digital world. I love nature. I love hiking. I also very value of Tibetan. So I think, yeah, people make clear choices about, okay, that's digital allowance for today, and I'm going to go out and
Right.
maybe just all these lovely things.
Right. Well, well said. My last two questions are the following. So first one, I'm wearing something I like today. I think it looks quite good on me, but how can I tell if something is good fashion? Or more explicitly, how can I tell if someone is dressing well? And what does that mean? Because nowadays it's all about, comfort. It's about feeling good in your body. But honestly, there are people that still dress better than others. So how do you define that? How can you tell that? And how could I, maybe go and tell my friends, I'm actually not dressing that bad.
Everybody should wear what they love, right? Don't be dictated to by people telling you what to
No,
do.
it's not about dictation, but it's about I would say maybe a sense of beauty. So how do you define that? Because it's one to be comfortable, and it's another one to be I don't know, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. So you
Just
can.
feel good about yourself, then wear what you want. If it makes you feel good, do that. If that's who you want to be and how you want to look, do that.
I think there's some things that I think that are perfect on certain people, but if I would wear it, it would look ridiculous on me. So I think it's also your character. I think if you wear things that you like and you feel comfortable in, then it looks perfect on you.
Right. That's fair. Then yeah, that's a good answer for me, because then it's a lot less pressure on my shoulders, right? So all right, and to finish this about your two beautiful companies, can you tell us anything about the future? Something that we can expect to be coming soon? Maybe some alpha information, or no, I'm kidding. But just what you've got planned, and yeah, if we should be expecting something incredible coming forward.
I can't. I don't know if I can getting it strategy if I told you
Right.
about it. But for sure, of course, it's the digital world, and for us, obviously, as I mentioned, we're trying to build an infrastructure for the universes that we're creating. That's not a small job. It's going to run. So we've always got things. We always maybe try and go one up on the last thing that we did. So when we're looking ahead, I would say from November all the way through to September next year, in terms of all our projects and how they're there's a lot coming.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that we're very
How
excited
can you
about.
how can you plan for a year in this space? And since everything's moving so fast, you said a year.
Yeah, well, we know what we need to build, right? We
Right.
know what we need to build. We know the projects that we need to get out there. And tech takes time. It isn't. We shouldn't kind of. It's just fast because it's tech. We've got an amazing dev team who are absolutely killing it, but they need time to implement the things that we'd like to see on the platform. The fashion team are already creating stuff for next year. My team, comms and content, we're working on campaigns. We've got it implemented, so there's loads of stuff coming, but you can't just do everything. It sort of feels like it's in the moment,
Right.
I guess, in the NFT space. But before you see them appearing, there's a lot of time and effort, work and development, iterating, and conversations.
So then we should expect at least one more year of incredible things from the Fabricant.
Oh, it's incoming. It's totally incoming. Yeah, I wish I could be a bit more specific, but it's
Right, that's fine. We'll follow on social media.
Do
right?
do. Join our Discord community.
Right. What about you, Tal? And
I just want to mention that also creating digital objects doesn't take less time than actually creating them physically. I mean, if you want to do it high quality, highly rendered, it takes a lot of hours of work into creating those stuff in software. So just a note on what you said.
Yeah.
For us, well, in the end of the month, we're going to be at the Dutch Design Week. So if you're in the Netherlands, you're more than welcome to come see us. We're going to show our full production on-demand T-shirts. So within 2 hours, we're going to produce an on-demand made-to-measure piece on the spot every day. So that's kind of showing our technology and
Is it only going to be for women, or should I come?
men and
Okay.
women, so you're all welcome. And we're actually focusing on those micro factories, on connecting all the dots of the technological abilities into creating this new purchase experience and also new production line. And we're also hoping to have collaborations with other brands and actually making made to measure available for other brands as well. So not only Atelier, because we believe that the change needs to happen fast, and for that we want to have our technology shared with the rest.
So then a big milestone that also is coming soon is the fact that you will be expanding towards men also, right?
Yeah, so yeah, we're developing patterns, and it's of course a lot of research and development on that. But yeah, we will be
Nice.
doing also unisex designs.
Okay, that sounds really nice. Do you have anything else you would like to add or share, or maybe ask each other, or so?
I'd just like to know that, when we work at Fabricant, we're initially a service agency to physical brands. I'm just trying to get them to integrate 3D sampling. It's a no-brainer in terms of being able to iterate and not physical fabric back and forth across the world, make a tiny adjustment. Like it's madness. So what Charles in terms of is super, it's great. It's smaller kinds of beauty that are reading ideas and putting themselves on them. It's very much a combination of our work that's really going to shift fashion sustainability to live within our planetary boundaries. There's planetary realities, which is at the center of both our work, and it will take both of these different approaches to get us well.
Right.
Yeah, I just said before, I met Kerry when he just started, and he had a desk here, not far away. And for me, just following his path and seeing how he evolves, and like really looking at how the Fabricant started, and then slowly see them growing. It was a really nice experience for me, and it gives me a lot of hope to see that other people actually are able to make it and doing great job. So someone to look up to.
Nice, and then we see a great team here. That was it. This was this week's session of Blab. Thank you so much for being here with us. I think it was a really interesting conversation, and I'm glad that we could touch upon digital, phygital, and physical. And hopefully, we're gonna see you around more often. Thank you, everyone watching.
Thank you.
Okay.